Hello, 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 hello. Hello, 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 hello. Welcome to the stream. There's Marco. Hi, Marco.
Hello.
Yes, welcome everybody. How's everybody doing? This is awesome. So, you better be shaved and had a proper haircut for today's stream. You're sadly wrong there. Lunatics. Hello, Modestus. Hello, Hotus. Hey, Noxie. Steve King. How's everyone doing? So, yeah. Here we go. So, my old friend or enemy, I don't know which way we should say this, Marco, but my old friend Marco's on the stream today, Okramias, and we're going to be talking about open source. Um, so, yeah, I guess you wanted to do something and you thought it might be interesting to do it on stream. So, tell us a little bit about what you were thinking we could do today.
Right, so I have this library. It's called Package Versions. It's relatively popular, mostly by accident, not by intent of mine. It was interesting to me initially. And, I build packages that are a bit controversial because I have a very strict maintenance policy. Basically, you are either on the last version or you are going to use something old. And my kind of like release policy kind of triggered a series of events that led to Composer itself having the same functionality as my library. So this package version library that I built is a small set of versions of everything you have installed available for the PHP engine without having to load any files at runtime. And now Composer version 2 has this functionality out of the box. So in practice, this library is no longer needed. Now it is needed. People have installed it. People are going to keep relying on it for years to come, I guess, for years, months. We'll see how long, but it's probably going to be years. And what has to happen is to use the Composer stuff inside this library instead of building the wheel myself. So we throw away everything, put in whatever Composer built for version 2.0, and then we can make a release that we say this now works with Composer 2.
Right,
And
okay.
right. And then after that, what will happen is that I will go to packages after I've released, which may or may not happen today. We'll see about that. It's unlikely that I will get to release because Composer 2.0 is not out yet. So we are not 100% sure that what we're relying upon is stable.
Yeah.
And then we can go and say, goodbye, package. You've done your work. You've been useful. There's better stuff out there now.
So is your thought to deprecate this and update the docs to say don't use this anymore, or is it to like make a shim to the built-in stuff in Composer version 2?
Yeah, so the library should be exactly as it is right now from a consumer perspective. So
Yeah.
all the types, all the signatures, they should match exactly what they do right now. Even the strings that are returned, I'm not sure if I can do that. We'll see about that. But it will be abandoned on packages.org. So it will be flagged and we'll say this library is now abandoned. That's the idea behind it.
What the
Okay.
hell just happened? Sorry. Yeah, I don't think this has ever happened to me. Lunatics is gifted 10 tier 1 subs to the community, and I have no
What?
idea how to respond to that. So, thank you very much. And now we have a million animations that come up for 10 minutes. So, yeah, that's weird. Awesome. This is super exciting. So, I guess we could take a quick look at the package and what it is. Let's turn that audio off, though, because that's going to be annoying. Um, I guess we could take a look at the package and what it is. So, what does this package actually do out of interest?
Yeah, it's a very silly map of versions. I'm not sure if you can switch to my screen. I already
Yeah,
have
yeah,
the
of course
reading
we
app.
can. Yeah, yeah, you just have to say.
Yeah.
There we go. Perfect.
So all we do is all this package has, this library has as an API is this versions get version thing, right? And when you ask for this, it will give you a version as a kind of like a nice version plus a hash of the current version your library is on. So why this is useful when you need to build something like, for example, like cache that needs to be pruned every time you deploy.
Yeah.
So your deployment may depend on the version of your application. So you put your application name here, and you use this in your cache identifiers. And whenever you deploy, whenever you have a new version, these caches will be automatically invalidated. And the reason why this is built like that is that it needs to prevent file system access at runtime, because that's a massive, massive performance penalty when you do it at runtime, especially if you do it a lot of times.
Awesome. Okay, I get it. I finally understand what this package does. And it only took a phone call with you to do that, or a stream. So that's amazing.
Yeah.
And
it's ridiculous, though, because this package just does that. And if you look at it, it's like 800K of stuff just for doing that. It's absurd.
It is what it is, I guess. It is what it is. Yeah. I mean, it's needed, right? And I know that there was some... I mean, we won't go into too much detail, but I know there were some conversations with you and the composer team about, because I guess they wanted you to make this package support expired versions of PHP, let's say, and you weren't happy to do that because that's your beliefs, and I, for one, feel like that's 100% your prerogative. You were the person who has to maintain this package. And I know we've got some other open source package maintainers on stream, and you're the people who have to actually sit there and spend your time maintaining this stuff. So I fully support that. So which is why it was kind of written into Composer in the first place, right?
Yeah. So effectively, what happened is that I have this strict policy where I say, look, if you want the new stuff, if you want the shiny new version, you need to update your dependencies to the new versions too. The composer team has a different vision in which they say, we want to support everything because it makes it easier for everyone that is kind of like back behind to update. And that's a very, very different vision. So what I feel my packages do with these very strict constraints where I say just latest is supported, everything else is just maintenance, is that it pushes the ecosystem forward.
Yeah.
There's a different vision on the other side where they say, yeah, we move the ecosystem forward because we support everything, so everyone can upgrade. I disagree with it. They disagree with me.
It's fine.
And that's
right?
but this is
fine.
good because this conflict then led to Composer effectively saying, okay, Marco doesn't want to do it, so we'll do it ourselves. Sorry, Jordi, I know you did it because of this. But now that it is in Composer, and effectively this should have been in Composer, it's just that effectively I never contributed to supporting it there. Now it is in Composer, we can do it there.
It's worth just spending a tiny amount of time talking about this because, look, Composer has a very different remit from you. Composer as an organization, as an open source project, has a very different remit to what they want to achieve and who they want to support than you do as an open source maintainer, I guess. And that is fine. It's different. It's not right and wrong. It's not black and white. It's just different. And that's fine. Yeah. And I think people should get in the habit of remembering that I know we've got open source contributors. I see Nuno on the call who we've got on the stream tomorrow to talk about their open source packages. You know, these people are not doing this for fun and enjoyment and getting paid to do it. You know, this is a lot of time and energy in all the packages that you support. So yes, thank you for that. And it's commendable to me that Composer want to make sure that people who are on old versions of PHP through no fault of their own can still use Composer. That is a commendable goal. Because let's be honest, some people are not on PHP 5.6 out of their own choice, right? They're there because that's the restrictions they have. We worked on projects where we had to work on old versions of PHP together because getting new versions of PHP onto a server that's on an aeroplane is not actually as easy as you'd think that it is, right? So it's fine, but it's awesome. Nice to see you, Sebastian. Yes. So yeah, let's do this. Let's do this. How do you want to start?
Well, okay, so the first thing I would like to do is let's look at what is in Composer 2.0.
Yeah.
As far as I know, Composer 2.0 has these facilities. It generates the same classes that my package would generate, but it generates them in Blender. So the first thing I would go and do is let's install stuff here, all right? So I'm gonna go and run a Composer version first. Okay, so I'm gonna try a Composer self-update.
Yep.
Preview, I think.
And
I still use passwords.
Are you going to
for
tell
this.
us your password, or are you're not?
I mean, even if you knew it, I have to factor out, so it doesn't work if I don't have the YubiKey plugged into my computer. It's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5.
Yeah.
So now we're running with Composer 2.0. So if you see effectively the people behind Composer, Jordi, Niels, Alcohol, which I don't remember what his name is, but his nickname is amazing. They made it a very seamless process. Like upgrading to 2.0 to try it out is really as easy as that. Now, from now on, we're in uncharted territory. Anything can happen. Everything can break. I have no idea.
This is the fun, right?
Right, in theory, Composer install should now. Oh, ooh.
Boom.
Oh, look at that. Oh, PHP code sniffer, Composer installer. Okay, you know what? I have a bunch of dependencies that are things that we don't need. Like we don't need PHP unit. Sorry, Sebastian. It's like just useless. I don't do testing. We don't need infection. Infection is a mutation testing tool. I go like with the heavy guns when it comes to development because it's just not worth developing a half-tested solution, I feel. We don't need the coding standards. We're not going to care about coding standards. That's something for me to do when doing spit and polish on any work we do here today. And it's mostly very tiresome, repetitive work. And we're not going to use Psalm because right now we just want to get a very simple working prototype. We'll then reintroduce PHP unit and reset the dependencies. But basically, all of these are in conflict with what we want to depend upon. So I'm going to require Composer dev, and I'm going to, instead of doing Composer install, a Composer update. And hopefully, oh, look at that. That's quite fast. So Composer 2.0, oh, it now shows us, okay, it shows us that it did some log file operations. This is nice. That's some interesting improvement over the previous Composer version. So it tells us I moved all these dependencies from this version and I removed all this stuff. Cool. And then it says, I'm sorry about the green color here.
Yeah, it's okay.
Writing log file, cool. So this part worked, and now it's gonna download. And I mean, if most of it is just downloading from cache, cloning from cache, yeah. And then this is where my library comes up. So this library operates as a Composer plugin. It hooks into the installation process.
Yep.
And when Composer generates the class map for or the autoloader for your library, I hook into this and I say, okay, now I run the plugin, and I added these 2 messages just so you know.
Yeah.
Basically, this means if there's an exception in here, you know it was my fault. That's why I added the 2 messages. And this is to prevent any runtime operation by this package. This package should never do any file system access if it installed correctly. So in theory, now we should have a new vendor structure. So if I go under vendor and I go under Composer, we should have an installed PHP, installed versions. This is nice. So installed PHP seems to be an array.
Awesome.
I'm not sure if you remember this. There's this installed JSON. So if I look them, they look the same. I think they are the same idea, right? Kind of. But the advantage of this is that while install PHP is a PHP file, install JSON is a file that the PHP engine does not understand, which means that if we encounter it at runtime, the install PHP version is going to be cached in the PHP's upcache mechanisms.
Yeah.
And this is a massive advantage because what PHP does is it finds everything that looks like a string and deduplicates string that are the same. And there's a bunch of interesting stuff to keep it small and to keep it efficient and easy to access. Whereas a JSON file, we have to load the file, run it through the JSON parser, and then we have this array structure. And every time we need to do it again and again and again. So there's a massive advantage in having configuration, caches, and everything similar as PHP files.
It's not loaded from the disk either, right? If it's in opcache, it's just like sits in memory and it doesn't actually hit the disk for that.
Exact. And if you have PHP 7.4 and you use preloading, it could be even more aggressive. It could just like preload when the server starts. So you don't even have that first file system access the first time you touch it.
I just wanted to pretend I knew what I was talking about there, Marco. That's all. I just felt like I needed to like chip in a bit because this is intense. I love it.
I mean, this is why I designed the package. That file system access is problematic, even if it's not a performance issue. If you do repeated file system access, you can imagine you're doing a repeated file system access on production machines. You're literally crunching through hard drive. If you avoid file system operations in first place, you save resources, CPU, electricity, and actual physical devices. So, and you make it faster. So big win. So we have this installed PHP, and now there's this installed versions. Installed versions is this new class that Composer now generates for us. So, I'm getting errors from plugins that I install. I have too many plugins. So, here you see it has like this list of packages. You see there's a version, there's a pretty version, there's a reference. Interesting. So what we probably want to work with is something like the pretty version plus the reference that looks like what we need. Right, this is what we want to show, and this is what we want to append, because if you look at the README again, this is what we had in our package. We had 100 at yada yada.
And so you just want to like make this package versions to go back. You want to make it like a shim so that it uses the Composer installed versions class, and so it essentially you're deprecating it and making it continue working by just letting it use Composer 2.0's installed versions.
Yeah, pretty much. So it's just going to be using this. It's there. Why not? So, my God, I don't know why the code generator generated this garbage. I'm gonna just reformat it because I can't. I just can't look at it. Yeah. Right now I can look at it. Thank you, PHP Storm.
Yes, indeed.
This is not a sponsored video. No. So, okay, there's a get install packages. Okay, it uses the array keys of the versions. Wait, what's the versions? Oh, versions and root are different things. Okay. And by the way, I reviewed the patch that introduced this, so I should know what I'm talking about, but I don't really.
We can take a quick look at that if you want or not. It's fine.
Yeah.
I have
so
it here.
If you're curious, it's patch 80. I'm going to put it in the chat. I'm not sure if the chat allows this.
Yeah.
I sent the link in the chat there.
I trust everyone in the PHP community to put good things in the chat and not bad things. It's fine.
You obviously don't know the community as large, but okay.
So this is the patch, right? If you look at my screen, So I don't know what's the interesting bit here or not.
It's mostly like the fact that there's like a lot of people discussed it. There's been discussion on what is needed, what are the endpoints. Effectively, what was done here is the same design that was put in package versions a few years ago was repeated now for Composer 2.0. So You see is the usual suspects. Nicholas, he's very performance sensitive person. He goes into the performance issues. I mean, he worked at Blackfire for a lot, so that's kind of his area of interest. Jordi has been mostly introducing this, and then a bunch of discussion on the API that is here. But effectively, the API seems to be very small. It has satisfies, which is give me a package and tell me if we match it, which may or may not be interesting. It gives us version ranges, which say what are the ranges that we support for a certain package. But it also gives us the exact version for a specific package. And interestingly, I'm looking at it here, they use an out-of-bounds exception. And looking at my library, I'm just going to see, it's going to be under package versions. Oh, you see, by the way, this file is modified. That's because the plugin touched it. But we also use an out-of-bound exception. Look at that. That's very useful. So we don't even need to change that. We can literally just call that.
Woohoo! Yeah.
So what we want to do is we want to do something like return install versions, right? Get version. Oh, and by the way, you can't see my auto-completion, which is a bit,
yeah, it's okay.
Annoying. That's kind of like...
I'm sure everyone in chat watching uses PHP Storm and is aware of what the auto-completion looks like, right? It's fine.
Yeah, I mean, this is... Let's see, this gives us the version, of course. Just checking public const versions, that's going to be a problem. But effectively, they give us, okay, it checks for the package name, it checks what are the versions, and then it gets the version. Now, I just need to see what is this version. Now, of course, since Jordi wants to support all the PHP versions, you see there's no return types here. This is so annoying. There's like no type declarations here. There's nothing I can work with.
Yes.
I have to basically... This is where you cannot write a unit test. Now here I have to write an integration test. There's no escape for it because anything can break in between. If you have types, you reduce the need for testing so much, but here we don't have types, and this is sad, but it is what it is.
Yeah, as I say, different scopes for different folks. That's not the phrase at all, but I like it, so I think we're going to stick with that.
I mean, I would have even preferred having a doc block here, you know, like at return, yada, yada.
Yeah.
Right. But okay, never mind. I mean, if anybody on the stream has the willpower to do so, feel free to contribute upstream and you can add types here. This is going to be a problem because what I will have to do here is going to add assertions. So I'm going to say version is equal that, and I'm going to have to add an assert version or is array version because I cannot trust anything that came from here now. I simply cannot, and I will not trust it. So let's see this
upstream to composer, Felix. Sorry, I'm just answering a question in chat because it seems like that's all I'm good for this stream, and that's cool.
So interesting. This returns null if the version is not there. So okay, so this cannot be missing. So let's look at the data structure. So you got the name and then you get a version. So the version is this one. Okay, so far so good. And that's not something we want. That's not what we want. We don't want this number. We want the pretty version and we want the reference because for backwards compatibility, we cannot change these strings. I cannot say, you know, my strings are now 20 characters longer.
No.
It's going to break everyone's downstream project. So let's see, is there another way to access this structure? And this is where I may throw in the big guns and go with reflection if needed. I mean, it's bad, but I mean, this is why I write integration tests for this stuff.
Yeah.
I mean, effectively, an API without types or using reflection for me is the same level of danger. Right, so this is not what we want. It gets the pretty version. The pretty version, we saw it. it's the pretty version looks more like what we want. It's this thing here. This is the pretty version.
Yeah. Agreed.
And so get version, we don't want this. All right. We are going to use the pretty version.
Awesome.
And then we're going to use the reference, because the reference is that SHA-1 that we need, right? This one.
Yep.
This is, and by the way, this is a SHA-1. I don't know if it changes depending on whether you use Git, Mercurial, or file system path. I have no idea how that works.
SVN.
Yes, SVN. It could be like 12. That's SVN. Yeah. That's SVN for you.
It would be, yeah.
Yeah. It used to be simple. I mean, we did not realize how complicated it was, but it looked simple at the time. And we have get root packages, which is interesting. And then get row data. Okay, get row data is interesting because this way I don't have to use reflection to access data.
What was that?
It's a bit
self $installed. Oh, it's returning the entire array.
It's returning the structure, which is not documented, which means that it's basically useless for my purposes. From a type level perspective, if I were to design this, I would do something like, well, this one would be a psalm return non-empty string. This is what I would first do. This is my minimal definition. If I were to declare something on get row data, I would do something like a psalm return array with let's see,
yada yada yada
root, which is an array with other stuff and so on. So I would go very pedantic with it, but again, not my library, my decision there. And then there's this reload data. So just so you understand, this is a bit ugly. The idea behind this is that during Composer installation, like during the process of installation or update, like when you run a Composer update, a plugin may change dependencies somewhere.
Yeah. Okay.
So the reason why installed is not a constant, but it's a static variable, is that these dependencies do change while the system runs. So in order to allow any other plugin to add a dependency and still get fresh data about what is installed, they added this reload endpoint, which swaps the data at runtime. And this is something that happens deep in Composer, and you should not have to call it yourself in theory. This is really, really bad from a design perspective, but I understand it's a design trade-off there, because effectively it makes everything very, very wobbly.
Yep, it's a specific. I mean, it's solving a specific problem for this library, right? And as you say, you shouldn't be calling this in userland realistically.
Yeah, this is like very deep, private stuff that you should not write. But as you can see, everything that my little library did is already in Composer, and you do not need to do anything about it. The only thing you will have to do to use this class is adding a dependency, which I'll check in a bit. There's like a dependency. There's a runtime API package. Yes. There's a package called Composer Runtime API, which I'll just show you how it's used. So
we don't see that, but that's fine. That's not.
I'm just going to my screen, and what you do is you say, I want to rely on this, and I want to rely on 2.0. So now you can depend on this new installed versions class that Composer provides. And this guarantees that Composer got it. So, right, let's go back to versions. So now we want the version. So our version is equal to, we said it's not that install versions, but it's the get pretty version, right, of the package name. Dot and add, which is what our previous format was.
Yep.
Installed versions. And here we say reference, I think.
If you just before you carry on, if you've just joined the previous API, this is how it looks. So it gives you major.minor.patch at, and then the SHA-1 key. So that's what we're trying to replicate right here.
Yeah. Let me check. Does any of these endpoints return null or stuff that I cannot rely upon? Oh, that's ugly. I mean, I don't think I should ever run into this scenario. I cannot imagine a case where a pretty version is not defined, but I do not have this scenario in mind. And I also don't have a scenario where a reference is not available. I can think that this may be the case when you use a repository that comes from a local file system path or a symlink. That may be the case. I'm not sure why this would be null. Not sure.
Yeah, I thought I had something incredibly sensible to say, but I don't. No, it shouldn't be null, right? Ever.
Yeah, I can imagine that Composer supports so many things that is so different from my mentality there. Like I would just say like, nope, just there's no need for supporting that. But Jordy's crazy enough to develop on a Windows computer, so I mean.
Well, no. Let's not go there, please. This is my stream. And we don't.
I mean, I'm just saying I would never do it.
We're equal opportunities. No, it's fine. I've been trying to develop on a Windows machine recently. It's actually really cool. The only thing that really annoys me is the PHP Storm shortcuts change, the default.
Is that why you look so aged recently?
That's why it's so annoying. What do you mean? Is that why I look? Just I got the grey beard. You leave me alone. You can't bully me on my own stream. And going back to that, I do need to catch up quickly. So Lunatics, thank you so much for the 10 tier 1 subs. That's amazing. And thanks for the follow. Frantisekmasa, you can rate my pronunciation out of 10. I love it. And thank you for the follow, enunomaduro. And we look forward to seeing you on stream tomorrow to talk about Pest PHP, the new test runner. And Felis for 9 months at tier 1. Jeez, thank you so much. And thank you, Thomas Snow, for the follow. Okay, you may continue. Thank you.
So do I get 50% of that?
You do not get 50%. No. I'll buy you a beer when I see you in 2022.
Good. All right. So I think this scenario is not interesting to us. I'm going to skip over it, and I'm going to assume these are strings. So there's an interesting thing happening here. I use Psalm, and this is going to bite me later. But I use Psalm with totally typed. Oh, I use totally typed false. Okay.
Naughty.
That's good. Naughty indeed. I should use totally typed true. Never use totally typed false. Which is by the default, by the way. But okay. I think this is good enough. This is like literally all we need. Now the problem is that this entire structure is generated code. So how does this work? So I have a plugin system that generates this class every time you run a Composer install. Now, there is one API endpoint that I cannot remove from this library, and that's the root package name. The root package name is a constant. And sadly, since it is a constant, I cannot call a different endpoint to populate it.
No.
There's no way for me to do that. So I will have to keep the code generator for a while. And the code generator will have to generate just this constant, and this goes away because this, you see, I marked it as internal. You're using it, that's your problem. You ask for it. If you're using this and you get a BC break, it's not my problem. I marked it as internal. You should not be relying on it. So we want to generate a class that looks like this. That's how it should look like. And that's how the package looks like. This goes away as well because we don't have any key of anything here. We don't know what a key is. So we just want a string. And we get the out of bounds exception, which so far matches. Yeah, so far it matches. And we are going to just generate this class. So we can simplify this, and I'm going to show you how this happens right now. So there is this installer package, and this installer package is generating this class from a template. So you see there is a template here. I use nowdoc syntax so that I can put any code in here and it will not be evaluated. There will be no interpolation. But this is our template, and I'm going to try and adjust this template so that it matches what we want as an output. So we don't care about the versions anymore. This stuff is gone. And we want to replace this body here, right? This is different now. So I'm going to go to the versions that I manually adjusted. And again, I did not test any of this. We'll see about the tests later. We'll have to write integration tests. And I have integration tests, by the way. It's just we have to write some more. And what's the package that we use? It's this one, composer installed versions. So I'm going back to the installer, and we want to have that there as a dependency. Everything else stays the same. I really wish I could get rid of any code generation and say, look, this, it just doesn't exist anymore. I would love to, because if I did that, then I would no longer need a plugin. There would be no need for this to be a composer plugin anymore, because the class would be static. Then you see the new Composer API has a bunch of new endpoints. There's activate, deactivate, uninstall. So you can now do other things during Composer steps. And I subscribe to the post autoload dump. So the idea is that after the autoloader is available, which means that everything in the vendor directory is available to us, then I'm going to dump this version class. Dump this version class is just a callback. It's a callback method, and this callback method does a bunch of things here. So first of all, it checks if we don't have package versions, then it means something else is going on. The plugin is globally installed, so we don't want to generate any code.
Yeah.
We can... Oh, this is interesting. We generate the version class. Look at this. This is some interesting stuff that happened during development.
Final class versions. Okay, yeah.
Yeah, so what happened here is that I had this string like this, and Composer's internal parsers were detecting this as the file containing the class versions, because they were based on a regular expression. So I had to do this horrible thing just to tell it stop looking into my stuff. It's not your stuff. This is not relevant to you. I mean, that was really ugly, but okay. So it generates the version class, and you see there's some replacement. It's just an sprintf. We no longer need these versions here.
Yeah.
This goes away.
We're taking that out of the constant because you marked it as internal. So.
Yeah, so effectively, where is it? This one.
Yep.
Gone. You see this one. Oh, you can't see this overlay. But yeah, this block here.
Yeah, we see the overlay. That was fine.
Oh, you see the overlay? Yeah. I don't see it. Okay.
That's perfect. Yeah.
Okay.
So there's a question from chat. Why is Marco not using @sam param non-empty string for get package versions of his package?
Which API is it?
I think you were though, right? I think this is probably the generated code, right?
Yeah, so this is the code generator.
Yeah.
This is code that runs when you run Composer operations. And this is the generated class. Now, what I had before here was a different endpoint, a different API specification. Where is it? Was it here? Oh, no, it's not here. It's up here. Look at this. If you didn't know about this, you can have a psalm param key off and define that the parameter must be a key of a certain constant. And this is really useful to basically restrict this endpoint to be used only with some constants. So you cannot have a dynamic string that is not known up front. Really, really helps in avoiding very stupid mistakes or user input. You don't want this to be used with user input. It's just not designed for it. You should not have user input here. So this already prevents user input if you rely on a tool like Psalm. And it's gone, by the way. Non-empty string is not possible because I do not know what this API depends upon. The only thing this API depends upon is a string.
We talked about this a little bit earlier when we were looking at installed versions API. There's no guarantee about what's going to be coming back from this method.
Yeah, this API is not documented at all. This is generated code, by the way. I just reformatted it, so I don't know if it is an optimization pass that removed documentation or if there's no documentation at all in it. But as it currently stands, there's no type definitions, no type declaration of any sort, no suggestions of what the types look like. So everything will end up being an integration test here. It's still an integration test. It's no file system access because all we do is effectively an in-memory operation. So it's going to be a very fast integration test, but it is an integration test nonetheless. And there's no way to verify that otherwise.
Yeah.
There's another question. What is it? But key off is gone. So now it can be a non-empty string instead of key off. Yes. So this means that this endpoint now works with any string. This is okay because what we're doing is we're widening the type. We're not making it smaller. If I made it smaller, that would be a backwards compatibility break because I would break downstream applications that call this endpoint with already the current type. So if I make the type smaller, any application passing me a larger type do not fit anymore, and those applications are broken. But if I make the type larger here, then any application that had a smaller type still fits, right? So this is okay. So this is how I want it to look so far. So awesome. The installer now generates this. I think we're fine like that. There was a parameter that is gone. This parameter is gone. Where do I call it? Let's get rid of it everywhere. Right, so versions here is gone. So here you see it's flagged. You're calling this with two parameters, but we don't need the parameters. And here we still use versions through this. We are checking. We're checking from the composer locker, which is a tool that checks the lock file. For us, if the root package is Acronis package versions, if Acronis package version is part of the installed dependencies.
Sorry, before you go on, I need to check something. I've never seen iterator to array before, and I'm not too proud to say that, so I'm just checking what that is. Copy the elements of an iterator into an array. Okay.
Yeah. So self-get versions here, I don't remember why, but I made it a generator. I really don't remember why it's a generator. It's probably just overcomplicated, and it should not be. But get versions is a generator and yields all the time.
Yeah.
And if you want to access this data, you need to use iterator to array.
Yeah, I get it. And I just never seen that method before. That's that function before. That's pretty cool, actually.
Yeah, effectively, this is all not needed in theory, and I just still have to keep this check in place. The reason why this check is here is that if you run a composer global install yada yada, which you should never do, never run composer global, never use composer global, please. Whatever they do, don't use composer global ever. But if you do, and if it happens, then you may by accident have my library installed in Composer, in a global package, which means that anytime you run Composer install, my library runs even though it is not part of your project's dependencies.
Yeah, which is a big problem for a library that is doing Composer hooks like that.
Correct. So what I need to do is I want to stop here and don't do anything. Like I just stop, don't dump anything. There's nothing to do because we are running in a project that does not rely on this package.
Yeah. Somebody's installed it globally. Okay. Makes perfect
Yeah,
sense.
don't install stuff globally, but if it happens, this is like my fail safe. And you see like a little package that used to have like this very little scope and more people using it means everyone and their dog has their own use case scenario. And I just can't be arsed, if you pardon my French.
You're okay on this stream to say pretty much, you can use swear words. I swear.
I'll keep it low, but
and also you can particularly use swear words and phrases that you've learned from me over the years. So that's
I'm
totally
really sorry,
fine.
Yeah. Right. So now we have this generate version class. Effectively, everything stays kind of the same so far, and the only reason why we still generate this class is because of this.
Yeah.
This is the only generated bit. There's no dynamic bits in all this class anymore, and the problem is that this is not an internal API. This is published API. I don't even know if I put it in the README.
Are you regretting making that public constant when you made this package now? Is that something? Yeah.
Yes. This should have been
a method, right?
Yeah, this should have been internal.
Yeah.
Something like that. And now I cannot, and this means like if this was not internal, then if this was internal, then I could remove this.
Yeah.
I could remove this.
It would just be a trivial.
It would be just a find replace, but it still has to live as a plugin because of that one constant.
Yeah.
All right, never mind.
And
I mean, what I can do is I can add deprecate it.
But this is why there's a particular part of the community that preach that everything you put in your API, in your public API, should be thought through and considered because of problems like this, right? This is a perfect example of past Marco not necessarily making great decisions. And I don't mean that nastily, but you know what I mean, right? This is past Marco thinking, oh, this will be fine. Whereas if you'd have been even more defensive, and I don't know how you could code even more defensively, by the way, but
the point is I learn every month a new kind of like defensive technique, right?
Exactly,
so what I do nowadays when I design a new package is I make it as restricted and annoying to use as possible. So like if I did not envision you to use it that way, you're not going to use it that way, and I'm going to make it extremely difficult for you to use it elsewhere in a different way. And this is fine, because what can happen is that you come to me and tell me, look, Marco, I want to use it that way. And I can tell you, I can tell you two things. I can tell you build your own. I can tell you fork it. I can tell you fork you. I can tell you, or I can tell you, okay, it's a legitimate use case and we can expand the API and it makes sense and it's not a difficult problem. But every little detail, in this case, a stupid little constant added on a class, is maintenance overhead, and not a little. In this case, it's a lot of maintenance overhead.
And it is. And I think that we have a lot of conversations in this community at the moment, and I'm going to go there, where there's a lot of clashes in styles of coding and people, and these opinions and the ways you think are totally based on your own experiences as a coder. If you've only ever worked on greenfield projects that only live for a year, you may not see a problem here. But if the reason that I respect your opinion and other open source contributors' opinions, we had Sebastian in the chat, I don't know if he's still here, Nuno, people who've created open source packages that have hundreds, thousands, tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands, millions of downloads, have much different problems and opinions than those people who are working on a 2-person project that only lives for a year. And it's about empathy, and it's about understanding that people have different problems than you and solve things differently than you. And more of that in the community, please. More, not my way is good and your way is bad. My way is different and solves different problems, and I have different experiences. Sorry, there's my soapbox rant for the day, which I do on every stream.
It's fine. I mean, I am in the strictness camp because this is stuff I do on the weekend. This is stuff I do when I'm not working on paid projects. So, I mean, yes, I have GitHub sponsorships, but that amounts for around 130 euros a month,
Yeah.
which pays for about an hour of my work. I mean, sorry for giving out my rates. That's how you need to charge in order to live in Germany. But effectively, yeah, it's just not worth putting time in solving problems that are not immediately your own problems and that you do not fully understand. Like if you fully understand the problem, you're like the theorist on that field subject. You may as well build the implementation that implements the system exactly like you know the theory. But if it's not 100% what you know, you should put some limits and say, I'm going to build just the parts that I understand. I'm going to support just the parts that I'm confident with supporting.
I agree.
This for me extends also to dependencies. I work with 7.4. I don't even have 7.2 on any machine that I work with. So that's like also a reason to support only what you are willing to support.
Anyway,
so,
thank you. That aside's important to me.
So if you look at this now, we have a bunch of tests because we have tests running here. So we have an end-to-end installer test that I don't remember writing, but that's okay. This like effectively writes a composer. So you see it creates a package versions artifact, which I don't remember what this does. Oh, it creates a zip file that you can install. So basically it says, create package versions as installable package, put a version in there, and then we're going to install it from there. That's how it works. And then what it does is, let me collapse a few things. It will write a composer JSON file, and then it will run a composer global update. Oh, global update, yeah, because effectively I'm testing against the global scenario too, right? Globals are this massive problem, the global dependencies. And I'm going to run it again, and I'm going to verify that this library did not generate this file. That's kind of like what.
So that was checking the. This is checking the early return scenario that we discussed 10 minutes ago. Yeah.
Correct. This verifies that if you run and have Composer, Ocrimus package versions installed as a global dependency, it no longer runs against your local system.
Awesome.
I'm just reading through the scenarios because effectively all these scenarios will not be relevant to us. So this removing a plugin does not attempt to generate the versions. Okay, yes, effectively. Composer remove command should not generate the package version file, especially if we remove package versions. Removing the plugin does not attempt to generate versions. Cool, that's fine. Does not attempt this. That's fine. This one is probably more interesting. Assert package versions is usable. Package versions is usable. Uses an external file because it's an end-to-end test. We're using a system post installation, so we cannot rely on anything that was auto-loaded so far. So we have to run a separate process and verify that use package versions works. So I think there is a use package version somewhere. Oh no, there is no use package versions. There is use package versions. Oh yeah, this is use package versions. So we generate the file, right? And we run it. So this is just verifying that this API works and it does not throw an exception. So this end-to-end test is more interesting to us. So in theory, the end-to-end installer test should be fine for us. So I'm going to close this one.
Yep.
Let's see, installer test, versions test. Okay, I think now what we need to do is, instead of going through the scenarios, we need to run the test suite. Now, I removed PHP unit.
Yeah, Sebastian said you should be using a FAR anyway back in the day, so that's fine.
I don't believe in FARs for dependencies.
Yeah, no, let's not have any more arguments. It's fine.
No, yeah. It's fine. I mean, what's the version for PHP unit? It's 9 right now. I think it's version 9. Yep. So I like keeping all my dependencies tracked together. So this library is designed around versions for packages, and effectively everything is kept together by Composer. It's a very strong concept. It has its downsides in which effectively If you want to use 20 different tools, at some point you will have a conflict. For now, we're fine like this. I'm going to run PHP unit. Look at how fast this is. This is so much faster, by the way.
Yes, it is.
It installed a bunch of stuff. Do not use Docker Instantiator, another library I wrote. Should never have done it. Yeah, effectively, it's installing a bunch of stuff. Why is WebMozart a search download with the PHP unit stuff? Interesting. Okay. It's fine. You can ask composer why, and it will tell you why a certain package is installed. Now I should be able to run vendor bin PHP unit. Oh, that looks slow.
Failed.
Yes, look at that. Failures 10.
Yes.
Yeah, okay. It's fine though. We're testing the code generator, right? So the code generator says, oh, look, you're missing this stuff, and you're missing this stuff, and you're missing all of this big array. And that's effective.
Yeah, you've changed the way the code is generated, right? So those tests
Correct.
are going to
so,
yeah, makes sense.
So the end-to-end tests will still verify that the final class that is generated works, but the code generator test should not care about the installed version. So there should be a bunch of expectations here. Yes, look at this. This should not be in the expectations. So you see I use this format, expected source, and I put a now doc here, and then now I can remove all of this. I can remove this. This is no longer needed. I'm going to copy this directly from here because why not?
Copy pasta.
Right.
Yeah.
Copy pasta indeed. Copy pasta. And I'm going to, where is it? Sorry, installer test. I'm going to do the same here. Now, let's see. How many test failures did we have before? We had 10 failures. We didn't have errors, which is good. It's interesting. So I'm only breaking expectations because the installer changed. Yeah. Now, in theory, I should have 9 now. Let's see if it's true. And by the way, this is why I generally run. Oh, there we go. Failures 9.
Yeah, awesome.
Good. So it's reducing in size. That's good. And I have to do the same thing another 9 times. I mean, it's a bit annoying, but this is when you're very pedantic about testing there.
I don't see how you could have done this differently, though, realistically. Like,
yeah, it's...
You change the installer, you have to change the expectations of what the installer generates, right? You can't really...
Yeah.
I don't know.
It's problematic because you have to test once what code is it generating, and then you have to test the generated code to see, does the actual generated code make sense? I have multiple libraries that have this sort of approach. So I'm changing it here. Let me remove this sidebar. It's not needed here. I'm going to remove this here. This array is no longer needed. And by the way, there was an interesting idea to change finally var export to use short arrays here, but it was not interesting for internals, or at least the BC break was not deemed relevant, which I understand fully.
I agree. Yeah. It's such a weird edge case use for that. Like, it's not worth people's time to do that, right? Let's be honest.
Yeah, it's just too much time indeed. Sorry, let me check because I still have this key off. That key off has to be gone. And I'm going to take all of this and I'm going just to paste it everywhere. Because now it looks the same all the time, right? It's not needed anymore.
The question in the chat was, could you have used PHP units data providers for this and just changed it in one place? Maybe not. Not
really, because the problem is that you see that I'm effectively, in these tests, I'm mocking the composer dependencies, the services that run in Composer in detail. And I'm telling them, please return this, please return that. Because otherwise, what you have to do is you have to run a series of end-to-end tests that run a full Composer install.
Yeah.
And they move so many parts that it's too hard to understand what's going on.
The other thing to think about here is that the reason you're able to copy and paste is because you've removed a constant that was an array of versions, I believe, and you've removed when you created this, you wouldn't have been able to copy and paste, but now that you've simplified it, you can. Things look similar, right? So
yeah, and I think
like an evolution problem. Yeah.
Yeah, what will happen is that at review, I will look at those tests and we'll see that, for example, some of the tests return the same data all the time. So what will happen is that we will just see, oh, these tests are all the same. Let's just trash them. There's no need for them.
Yeah.
Um,
And that's part of the way this has evolved, essentially. This is because you're having to make big changes because you're deprecating it.
yeah, and how I would approach this is I would probably reintroduce infection, the mutation testing tool, which I cannot do now because of a dependency conflict. Because it does not support Composer 2 yet. What I would do is I would run infection, and infection would run mutation tests. So what I would do is I would delete tests until infection says, now you have a mutation.
Yeah.
So infection would then effectively check, oh, you removed the test too much. I don't even need to do an actual manual or thinking work. I just go in, look at the test that I modified, drop it. Run infection, infection reports a mutant, cool, that test is required. Or that test is not sufficient alone. So it's a bit of a mechanic piece of work. Let's see, what's our state here? I think we should be down to 5 failures or something like that. 6 failures. It's still installer test line 501. Let's see, 501.
And while you're doing that copy paste there, I'll say thank you very much to Road Signs, who followed 24 minutes ago. Marcela Raju, you can rate me out of 10 for your butchering your name there. Thank you for the follow. Noxy, we know your name. How are you doing, Noxy? Thank you for the follow. Norbert Tech, thanks for the follow. Thompson372, thank you for the follow. Big Bird Luke, thank you for the follow. Awesome. You'll get notified. We do these streams every couple of times, once or twice a week. We have guests on stream, and the other time we stream, we mess around with code. So thanks for the follow. Awesome.
So root package provider. Let's see. This one fails. Oh, these, by the way, are very old. These are JetBrains suppressions from a time where the IDE was the best static analysis tool.
Yeah.
It no longer is. I mean, at this point, it's interesting that PHP Storm fell so back behind that
Is this from the extended inspections? I don't recognize that inspection in race condition inspection.
Yeah, possibly. I mean, I don't remember this. What happens if I remove it? Nothing happens anymore. So I think this is gone, possibly. It may be. I don't really recall. Okay, so what is this test doing? So this is test dumps version class to a specific location. So we have a root package in vendor, and now it's expecting a path. Now here's something interesting that's happening. So there's an expected and an actual. So expected is class versions. Oh, look at this. So it's saying, okay, this is what I'm expecting. I'm expecting anything. Then I'm expecting class versions to be generated.
Yeah.
Then anything again. And then I'm expecting that somewhere inside the file there's 1.2.3.
Yeah.
And then anything again. And of course, there's no 1.2.3 here anymore. No longer exists. So I'm not sure about how this test should be redesigned.
Where was that being included? That was in the constant that you removed from the installer, right? I'm confused as to where you were expecting to see that before.
This is part of the installer. I mean, the installer is still. Let's see. The test says test dump version class to a specific location, right? And now I'm expecting a path, and I'm expecting these to be either dumped in the vendor directory, right?
Yeah.
Or inside the current directory of this package, which is a bit annoying. What's going on here? So in vendor is part of the data provider parameters. And I'm generating the expected path where we expect the package version to be written. And I think it's writing something, but it's also expecting too much.
Yeah.
So the failure here is, what's the failure line? 501, line 501. So we are expecting at line 501. Yeah, look at this. This is what we want.
String latches format.
Yeah, so we want not to expect this. What we want is we want to see that there's a root package name.
Yeah.
We don't care about 123, but we care about a root package name.
So that's just confirming that the generated code contains the root package name constant, right?
Yeah, there's a difference between those. So there is a very huge amount of complexity added to the package in scenarios where you do not run with plugins. So what you can do is in Composer, you can do something like Composer install -- no scripts. If you do this, then all the plugins will also be skipped.
Yeah.
Which means code generation did not run. Now, in that case, what is happening is that there's this fallback versions thing. And this fallback versions is a horrible, horrible library that effectively it acts as a fallback. It will be executed instead of the generated class whenever you call it. And this is very, very slow. But there are projects like Drupal, like Shopware, that run with these flags on purpose because they have their own plugin system, their own way of installing third-party plugins. Imagine like a WordPress plugin, right? You go in, you click, and they somewhere included Composer in their backend, and it downloads stuff from a private repository and installs it in a custom location. Now, this is a configuration that is so complex and so annoying that that is just not possible to support. So what I did is, instead of generating the package versions, I've written these fallback versions, which will be used, and it will do the file system access. Like, look at this. This is terrible for performance. So it's like checking in the current working directory. Look for this, then look for it here. Then look at the Composer log. Then look at Composer log in this other location. Then look at this other location. No, just don't do this shit. Like, don't do this shit, and I mean it. Like, I mean it. Yeah, I closed multiple issues in which people told me like, your package is not professional. Like, no, fix your shit. Like, seriously, this is not my problem. So effectively, there's like a very nice description of what's going on, plus like, fix your shit, please, because plugin installers that hijack the Composer system are going too far.
They are going too far. Yes.
So effectively, there's like file exists and stuff like that. So this file, we will not touch it today, but in theory should no longer be needed. The only thing that this file should do is calling that fallback thing that we've the composer dependency.
Fallback, yeah.
So most of this can go, which is good. I'll remove it later. So right, so we have this root package name. This is not sufficient because fallback versions have this root package name. What we want to verify is that this is not in it, because this should not be what we see in our package. Let me go here and roll back this just so you see for a moment what is going on here. This is a bit confusing. So this is what the library looks like when you install it without scripts. So when you run with no script, it says this is a stub class. It is in place only for scenarios where package versions is installed with a no scripts flag. So you see the root package name is like this. The versions is empty. And we're going to remove it, by the way. And you see here it goes to fallback versions, right? And
yeah, it doesn't need to do that anymore, though, right?
It doesn't need to do anymore, right? Because we have our installer. Where is it? We have written a bunch of stuff to make it a bit easier. We can just use this, right? We can just do this now. Right.
Yeah.
And that's
because the only thing we're
basically
going to
it.
lose there, as we've mentioned several times, is the only thing that the composer hook essentially is doing at this point is populating that root package name constant. That's the only
Correct.
dynamic part of this now.
Right, and the fallback versions, the root package name is this weird unknown root package, blah, blah, blah. And I'm going to just copy it over. Where is it? Sorry. I'm clicking too many things too fast. Sorry for the watchers. So I no longer need fallback versions. I no longer need the unexpected value exception that no longer exists. This can also go away, I think.
Nah.
No, because we still have this.
The thing I would think about is that people will be doing a search on the package for unknown/root package unknown, and that bit of documentation explains to them why they're seeing that. So I think it's value there.
Oh, okay. Yes. No, look at this. If you're reading this doclog inside your vendor there, then it means that package version didn't install and it is in fallback mode. And I think that's okay. So what the test should verify is it was around line 511 that it failed, right? And we want to verify that self assert string not contains string. So we want to assert that this one is not contained in this one.
Yeah.
And this is going to be our generated source is equal to that. I'm going to just put it in a variable, right? And we're just going to reuse the variable because to file get contents is it's minimal optimization, but this runs millions of times. Right. Okay, so I think we're good. Let me run this again.
I'm enjoying the fact that chat are arguing about whether you used to be fatter in January or skinnier in January. That's, you've definitely lost some weight, right, Macro?
No, it's like, it's logarithmic. Everyone knows about the logarithmic scale, right?
And
it's a linear axe. It's a line on a logarithmic axe. That is on a logarithmic graph. Yeah.
As Grim says, just delete all the tests, then no failures. Lunatic says you can't delete tests if you don't have any. Yeah. Okay. Trolly trolls.
Why is this not working? So it's checking class versions and then root package name. Oh, there's an at here. Look at that. There's an at here that I did not see. Okay. So I think that's sneaky.
Typo in string causes problems. Who'd have thought it?
Mm-hmm. Right. I mean, this is green. So now what I would do is...
I like Ross Tuck's comment. If you need unit tests, it's because your types are too weak. Agreed.
To some degree. I would say they go hand in hand, but you first write the types, then you write the tests, then you write the implementation. If you don't have the types, you won't have the right tests. If you don't have the right tests, you won't have the right implementation. So
I thought, I always just write the code and then try and figure out how to backfill the types and the tests. Is that me doing it wrong all these years?
I mean, it depends on whether you bill hourly.
Yeah, great answer.
Right, so what happens now is that I would go in here. I would add composer JSON, composer lock, src. Oh, fallback versions. Fallback version is no longer needed. It's no longer in use. It's internal, so we can safely delete it. Nobody should be relying on this, right?
Yes, indeed.
It's gone. Look at that. Pam.
Doesn't it? Didn't you just have code that did use it, though?
Yes, it was here. It was in these versions. This is like the version before it's generated, right?
Okay. Oh, I see. So, right. Yes, I get it. I get it. Yeah.
Look at that. This is so nice. Yeah. Oh, and this LSP plugin. This is my LSP plugin for running Psalm inside the IDE, because it gets you much better types than what PHP Storm can get.
Oh, I'll have to take a look at that. Probably on stream sometime to figure out what that is.
It's a language server plugin, which means that it's designed to work with Java as well with C++, and accidentally it works also with PHP. Interesting.
Accidentally, yeah, of course.
Yeah, because the protocol is fixed, so the people behind Psalm have written this server that supports this protocol, and it works. It's really nice.
Thank you.
Right, finally got rid of this shit. That's my commit there.
Awesome. Yeah.
And now I push it and I get a link for it. So I'm going to create a pull request on package versions.
Nobody can see your browser, but that's fine.
I know. I'm going to send a link in the patch.
We'll go heads up and I'll show the pull request in my browser once you've created it. It's all good. It's all good.
And interesting, since we put a lot of effort in being backwards compatible, this can happen in a minor version. There's no added warnings. There's no added exceptions. The behavior should be exactly as it was before. So we're good in theory. So what does this fix? I don't remember. Anyway, I'm opening the pull request. I'm sending I'm just sending in the patch.
Okay, so let's take a look. Here we go. Pull requests. Number 143. Yes. I mean, we finally got rid of this shit. It is what it is. It's your package. You can call it whatever you want.
I mean, it's, if you think about it, it's like a very tiny library that was supposed to solve a very, very small problem. And then it grew and it grew, and more scenarios and more problems and more problems. So something as simple as generating a class with a few versions in there became a massive amount of maintenance. So I'm really happy to get rid of it. Effectively, it's not getting rid of it. The library works. The library will stay as is. What will happen is that I will go to packages once this is released. Of course, I will have better commit messages that explain what I did. So like I will do a git commit amend and write down exactly what we did during the stream. Explain why this is being done, how it is happening, if there are BC breaks to be considered. So it will be written. And then it will be released as a new minor version that only supports Composer 2. It does not support Composer 1. So in order to install this new version, you have to have Composer 2. Otherwise, it will just not work. Okay. And after Composer 2 is fully released and it is stable, I will go to packages and press the button and say, this library is abandoned, use composer/composer.
Yeah. And you'll deprecate it, and it'll still continue to work, right? People will have to upgrade to Composer 2 to use, or use a tag, I guess. Yeah.
So the library, I'm not sure if you can you jump to the library homepage?
Of course I can.
So if you go to the scroll to the bottom of the README, effectively, this library is under what we call the Tidelift commercial support. So Tidelift is a company that takes money from enterprises and gives it to open source maintainers. So I get paid, not much, but I get paid for maintaining some open source packages. One of these is this one, which means that if you're a big corporate or you are just able to like pay something like $10,000 a year to support open source packages that you rely upon, because I know that's the minimum that they get from companies. If you pay for it, then you are able to contact me through a back channel and tell me, look, we need support for this, this, and this. can you do it? Or can you guarantee that for the next 5 years, you won't just replace your library with a crypto miner?
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
That's kind of like it's just a minimum of responsibility.
Awesome.
There's a question in the chat. So if you want to use installed version files from Composer, we have to require Composer as dependency of our package instead? No, you don't need to use Composer as dependency. There is a meta dependency called Composer Runtime API, which comes with Composer 2.0. This Composer Runtime API is effectively what Composer 2.0 generates under vendor Composer, and it has these installed versions. This is the runtime API for Composer 2.0. So this package is something that Composer considers as system dependency while you run during a Composer installation. So during the Composer installation, that package is available if you're running with Composer 2. If you're not running with Composer 2, then this package is not available, and it will just say that this library is not installable or that it conflicts with your dependencies.
Yeah.
Could you port this to NPM? I mean, I don't mind breaking NPM too.
I mean, you couldn't make NPM any slower, right? So it'll be fine.
Yeah.
It's all good.
So what has to happen next effectively is spit and polish, which means much more time than we put today in the stream into figuring out what tests need to be deleted, reintroducing all the static analysis and code quality tools that we removed in order to be able to quickly show how to run Composer 2.0. Once that's done, we can do an actual release. A release effectively means a signed Git tag. If you do open source releases, please sign your tags. Do not release stuff that is not signed. And then we can call it a day until Composer 2.0 is out, which is going to probably happen by the time PHP 8.0 is out. Once Composer 2.0 is out, we can effectively abandon the package and say, please use Composer Runtime API instead. And that's the end of the story.
Don't tell Marco to get his own stream. Like, I'll try and get him on my stream more often if people are enjoying hearing him rant about code. That's totally fine.
Well, you can go to twitch.tv/Okramius, and I'm just hosting Gary right now. So
yeah, it's fine. And we'll try and get you on more often if people like to see this, because I learn loads every time I speak to you. Indeed, we're having a call later on tonight where we're going to work on some Laminar stuff, but that won't be streamed. But maybe we can stream that in the future. Maybe we can.
Yeah, we can define that. We're
going to be feeling our feet at the moment. Tonight, we're going to be feeling our way and figuring out how we're going to do this. I'll let some behind the scenes stuff, but I'll say that Laminar's development has not stalled. It's been worked on like crazy behind the scenes, but it's stalled for some of us who are in the community review team, or whatever it's called now. What's it called now? The technical steering committee. A couple of us have dropped the ball a bit, so we're going to try and do a weekly call where we spend an hour working on stuff, maybe reviewing pull requests and just pairing on this stuff. So maybe we can stream that in the future. I'm sure that will be interesting to people.
That's a good idea. It's just as it currently stands, we reserved some time in the evening. We'll have to see if we manage to fit it in.
We could, I think that the first couple of weeks we're going to be not doing a lot of interesting stuff for third parties to watch, because we're going to be figuring out what we want to take on, and it'll be more conversationalist than code review, I would imagine, the first few weeks. But once we find our feet, that'll be awesome. Yeah. It's great. So thank you so much. Thank you so much indeed. Thank you to everyone who hung out. This was super informative to me, and I'm sure to a lot of other people. And we'll try and get Marco on stream again. I know you're a busy man, and I can't afford your rates, so it's totally fine. It's all good. And the sad thing is that I spend way too much time playing games with Marco as it is at the moment, so I don't want to see his face in the day as well. It's totally fine. But yeah, thank you everybody. Tomorrow we've got Nuno on talking about PHP. Let's take a look. That's at 2:30 tomorrow. And then next week on Monday at 3 p.m, we've got the grumpy programmer himself, Chris Archer's coming on. I have no idea what he wants to talk about. He won't tell me. He just growled at me when I asked him. So, you know, we'll see. I'm sure he'll be talking about testing. I'm sure we'll talk about opinionated, argumentative stuff again. So thanks again, Marco, and thank you to everybody. And thank you once again to Lunatic for the 10 gifted subs. That's insanity. And we'll see you all next time. Bye, bye, bye.